Hello and welcome to the crease for another shot of the Cricket Show. You might have thought that painful collision with Mark Waugh would have stopped Matthew Elliott, but after a spot of knee surgery, he was well and truly amongst the runs on the Ashes Tour of England. And the news is he underwent more knee operations in the off-season. But if bowlers are hoping that it's blunted his appetite, they'd better think again. Jeff Hutchison reports.
Okay, standing by, tape rolling. And roll camera. Yep. And action.
Whoa!
Hey!
Particularly good.
Relax, lads, I'm going to have a playback.
It's a cold weekday in Melbourne, and Matthew Elliott is filming an ad designed to entice fans to get behind the Victorian bushrangers. They want to capture his trademark pull shot. It's his favourite stroke, and no wonder. It helped him to more than 500 runs on the Ashes Tour.
Well, that's beautifully hit. Picked that one magnificently. That's gone miles over quite a long boundary.
And once the butterflies settle down, it's probably no greater feeling that I've sort of experienced. Going out there and the crowd's right behind you if you're at home, and when you're away, they're sort of generally booing you when you walk out on the ground. So it's very exciting. It's something that, you know, you just can't sort of put into words.
It's been an extraordinary 12 months for Matthew Elliott. In November of '96, he made his Test debut in Brisbane, where sections of the crowd called him an imposter for taking Matthew Hayden's place. And then in the second Test in Sydney, he got flack for not being Michael Slater. And just when he settled down and was being Matthew Elliott, triumph became disaster.
No, they're back. I think they're back.
No wonder then that first Test century at Lord's meant so much.
Oh, he's gone down the wicket, and this is the 100. In comes the throw. He's got there. What a tremendous innings by Matthew Elliott. A wonderful knock. That's his first Test century.
Yeah, I did enjoy it though. I think it was, for me, it was probably more relief to get the whole thing of running into mark and being close to 100 against the West Indies and just getting all that off my back.
And that'll be it. Another short ball. Elliott turns it down to fine leg. Comfortable pull shot. And that is his second Test 100.
There would be a second, more relaxed 100 at Headingley, which confirmed the maturing of an outstanding talent. It had its origins here in Lancaster, Victoria, home to this sign, that cow, and the petrol station, which is closed for renovations. But Lancaster, Victoria is also home to a strip of concrete marked out in blue and red lines and bearing the name of the Elliott boys, Justin, Matthew and Ty. One day, it may be the most famous Lancaster landmark.
So Matthew's a left-hander, so what about the balls that fell within the corridor there of the blue lines?
Well, they were balls that could get him out. So he had to either defend or let go and be very careful of those balls pitched just outside off stump.
The red ones obviously take the ball off his pads?
Bread and butter.
It was pretty fierce because I was the oldest. We used to bat from youngest to oldest. So I'd bowl my bloody guts out to my two younger brothers, and then when it was my turn to bat, they'd piss off down the back paddock. So
I really think the worst incident was we inadvertently gave Matthew a new white ball for Christmas. And lo and behold, Matthew thought, there is not going to be a scratch on this ball. So he got all my good white sheets and proceeded to put them from the veranda right around to the fence so that the ball would not go on the drive and in no way be marked.
Now you look at Matthew today, can you see all the improvements that perhaps began here when he works the ball away on the onside? Do you have the little vision of the red lines marked on the pitch?
Yeah, well, I think you know, he was very keen to learn and to improve along with his brothers, and I think, yeah, you can see a lot of history.
Matthew Elliott has always been single-minded about his cricket, and we should be grateful for that, but he was also a fine student, and if Dad had had his way, we wouldn't be enjoying that pull shot.
Pharmacy, physio, medicine were all possible courses he could have entered, but he chose cricket.
And he said to you, Dad, I'm going off to England to play cricket.
He did, and many a heated word was exchanged in the Elliott household.
That Matthew plans to get a formal qualification after his career finishes says much about him. Always thinking, always working, determined to be as good as he can.
When Matthew was a teenager, he was as awkward and as gangly, but whenever he got pads on, he always looked comfortable.
Oh, good shot. You can't bowl short to this man.
In cricket in particular, every time I go to practice, I try and do the best that I can, make sure that I learn something or work on a particular skill. And I honestly feel that if you can do that, everything else will take care of itself. You know, the runs a year away will take care of themselves if today I'm at practice working hard. So.
4 years ago, the Australian women's team suffered a devastating World Cup loss to New Zealand. Since then, the team has been dramatically overhauled, with emphasis now on youth and athleticism. With the next World Cup due to be played in India in December, the signs for an Aussie revival are looking very healthy indeed. Amanda de Pledge reports.
It's always hard to make an Australian team. I don't think it really matters what year it is, but what we're finding now is that everyone in the squad has a very good chance of making the team. There's a lot of pressure being put on the people that have been in the team for a number of years now.
An Australian force more powerful than ever before. A force designed to combat the superpowers of world cricket and re-establish Australia's World Cup domination. This year's event in India will be only the 6th World Cup, with Australia having claimed the prize 3 times, England twice.
An England victory. Captain Karen Smithers giving Lords something to cheer for a change.
Australia's semi-final defeat back in 1993 was a painful blow, all out for just 77. A dismal result which still haunts the few who remain on the team.
We had a shocker in 93. We had some individuals that came up in different games, but we never really got it together as a team, and there's been lots of changes since then, and I can't envisage that catastrophe happening again.
In the 93 team, we had a lot of people that had been in the team for 8-9 years and were sort of going towards the end of their careers. And after that time, we had a big clean out of the team, and we brought the youth through, and basically we've got a team now that averages probably 5 years younger than what the 93 team did.
Big changes, including the appointment of a new coach in 1994. John Harmer was determined to inject some new life into Australia's elite game.
We've had a definite policy to introduce a little bit more youth into the team, and I think we've done that over the last 3 years, and get a team with girls who are a little bit more athletic and who are able to cope a lot better with the situation of the skills and things with the cricket game. There's been a gross improvement in the standard of the skills in every department of the game. Certainly the batting is a lot richer in talent all the way through. The bowling is faster, and even the spin bowling is a department that's improved a lot more. And it's been a positive drive to get athletes playing the game so that they can cope.
There's always been quality women's cricket, but it's just more consistent now. You know, we're scoring 250 to 300 on the 50 overs, depending on the wicket, of course. Around 250, 200, 250 on state matches, one-day games. So, you know, it's definitely, and there's different factors of why that is. We're playing on better grounds, and of course, you know, a different attitude.
Well, we've worked a lot on attacking, continuing to attack with our batting. We had a few players that were doing it out in the middle, but we needed to get the entire squad with that attitude that, you know, scoring 200 to 250 runs is really what we're after, and we can do that several ways. So we've practiced the big shots, but we've also practiced, you know, turning the strike over and the little things that go into making a big score. Our bowlers have worked on, you know, turning the ball more and picking up a bit more pace. We've done a bit of work with reverse swing for the conditions that they're going to experience in India. So there's been a lot of little areas that just need a little bit of fine-tuning.
Now, not only was that extra pace with no real extra effort,
Expert tuition from one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time, Dennis Lillee, is part of the team's first-class World Cup preparation. A tough test awaits them in India with a record 12 contenders and wet, humid conditions sure to challenge the best from Australia.
Generally, I would say our quickies are probably the quickest in the world, but whether that will be to our detriment on those slow decks in India will be decided.
India will be tough, there's no doubt about that, and I think the team that wins will be probably the team with a little bit of luck and the toughest mentally prepared for the series of games.
India, I think, will be very hard to beat on their own soil with their own umpires, and I think they'll be a surprise packet. And of course, England and New Zealand are always going to be tough as well.
An extra spin foul.
A new generation of Australian cricketers with a hunger for success. And when it comes to World Cup, there is simply no greater honour in the game.
And when I was sort of growing up, it was to play for Victoria, being a Victorian sort of thing. But and now that I've got in this Australian team this February, I started thinking, wow, my God, I can actually play in a World Cup. So you know, it'd be the ultimate.
Well, World Cup's the ultimate in women's cricket, and India's a great place. I went there as a junior in '94, and I loved it. So I'd love to go back and win the World Cup for Australia.
And that is the game for Australia.
Cricket after dark is something most of us take for granted. But in Adelaide, they're still waiting for the lights to come on. It will happen soon. 2 summers and millions of dollars past the original deadline.
Well, it'll take a while to tell the complete story, but it goes back to early 1993.
Barry Gibbs was then running the South Australian Cricket Association, and he, like everyone else, believed Adelaide Oval needed lights. But he also agreed with Adelaide City Council that permanent light towers would spoil a piece of our sporting heritage. A local engineer then came up with the idea of retractable towers. They'd pop up for the match, and then it would be down periscope after play. It was groundbreaking stuff.
Ever since Colonel William Light took so much care in laying out the city of Adelaide 161 years ago, the locals here have always been fairly cautious about what happens to their city. So really, the Colonel is partly to blame for this latest light problem. The retractable lights were another noble idea to protect the look of the city. But it was an idea much more easily said than done. And the original motive was soon lost in an argument over who was to blame for all the problems.
Work began in early 1995 to be finished for that summer. To most of us, the design looks simple, the top half of the tower telescoping into the bottom half and the whole thing descending into the ground. But it wasn't long before the builder, locally based giant Balderstone Hornibrook, and the SACA, the South Australian Cricket Association, were in court.
So there was a period of, I guess, the best part of 9 months where there was nothing happening with the project because you had a contractor that said that they couldn't build the lights as they were designed, and we had a contract with that contractor saying that they had an obligation to build the lights. So there was a standoff there which ended up, or started really, is a better way of putting it, in the Supreme Court here to see if we could resolve the dispute. It was quite clearly there was a dispute between the two of us.
Saying little in public about the dispute, Balderstone Hornibrook argued the design was unreasonable. The SACA's view was that it was a bit late to be saying this. The case went to mediation in Sydney, and work began again with a redesign and a deadline of July this year. But wind considerations prompted another trip back to the drawing board.
And that's off the edge, and a great catch. What a great catch taken by Gilchrist.
The Academy 10th anniversary game at Adelaide Oval last month was to be opening night for the lights, but that one came and went with only 2 towers complete. Barry Gibbs has retired, nothing to do with the lights, and as a part-timer now with the SACA, he can look back at the whole costly affair.
Had we been able to foresee the difficulties, it would have been very difficult to convince any board that we should have gone down this path. But having said that, I don't resile at all from the decision.
Early last year, Adelaide's lights shone at half-mast for a Super League match, and 10 years from now, The heartache of building them will be forgotten by all but a few like Barry Gibbs. As Adelaide's original town planner, Colonel Light believed strongly in the careful planning of his city, but there's no record of him saying it would be easy.
If you have a good close look at his statue, he's actually pointing from the top of Montefiore Hill straight at the Bradman stand. There was a very, very clever cartoon I saw in the early days that made reference to Colonel Light pointing his finger at Adelaide Oval and saying, that is the spot for lights.
Don't sweat the technique. Getting the simple things right in cricket will allow you to play to your best. Getting your batting stance right is just as important. My batting stance, I basically have my feet about shoulder width apart with my weight on my toes, which allows me to move my feet freely and quickly, and I place the bat behind my back toe. I find that if your feet are too far apart, then you've got your basis of support is too great and you can't move your feet quickly, as is if your weight's on your heels. You're just too sluggish, and when you need quick footwork, you can't do it. If your feet are too close together, you become a little unstable and you can fall all over the place. So I find the best for me, feet shoulder width apart, weight on my toes, elbow pretty well towards the bowler. But once again, with the stance, it's an individual thing. There will be slight variations with the stance, but you've got to be comfortable with it, and if you're comfortable, you're more than likely going to play your best cricket.
Former Kiwi captain Ken Rutherford toured Australia several months ago leading Transvaal. He's played for the South African provincial team for the past 2 seasons after the untimely end of his international career.
To me it was an exciting move to play first-class cricket as an overseas professional in another country. It's something which I had looked to do for some time. And obviously playing international cricket you don't get the chance because especially if you want to play in Australia or South Africa, the season's exactly the same as New Zealand.
Rutherford says he's enjoying the change and could stay another 2 seasons, agreeing the move has rejuvenated his career.
It has. I think towards the end of my captaincy with New Zealand I was getting a little bit annoyed and a little bit you know, I just wasn't enjoying my cricket. I wasn't enjoying the travelling, the constant airports, hotels and all the peripheral things outside the actual playing of the game. And I think going to Johannesburg has sort of breathed a bit of fresh air into my game and into my whole life probably.
This summer New Zealand will play 3 tests against Australia as well as competing in the one-day series.
So Ken, how do you rate New Zealand's chances this summer against the Australians?
In the one days, I think they're going to be a very formidable opponent. I think if you look at their side, likes of Nathan Astle, who I think is a very exciting cricketer, and Chris Cairns, obviously. They've got 2 guys there who can turn the course of a one-day game. Test matches, we haven't played good test match cricket for a number of years, probably since Richard Hadley left 1990, which is a heck of a long time. But really we've been very inconsistent. We've relied on a couple of individuals who probably haven't quite come off, and we're still finding our feet, I think, in terms of test cricket. But one-day cricket, I'd watch us. I'd certainly put $1 or 2 on.
Playing in their domestic competition, Rutherford is also in a good position to assess South Africa's chances.
They're a very competitive side, quite hard-headed. They're still hurting from the defeat at the hands of the Aussies back in March, April earlier this year in the test matches. They'll see this as a chance to get back. I think they've learned a lot of lessons. Looking at their team, I think they'll probably pick a better side, and I think they'll be better prepared than they were. The last series against the Aussies was at the end of a very long summer, probably for both sides, but I think the Aussies adapted to it a lot better than the South Africans. I think they started to show the wear and tear of a very long season. This time will be in the middle of a season where they'll be quite fresh and they'll be very motivated.
The former Kiwi opener believes the biggest hurdle facing the Australian side is its hectic schedule.
Gee, they just play 12 months a year these days, don't they, the Aussies? They seem to be the most sought-after commodity in world cricket, so they just hitchhike their way around the world, really, and play in whatever country offers them a series. I'm sure their players must be starting to feel a little bit tired. They've got a series against New Zealand which probably won't be as onerous. I probably shouldn't say this, but probably won't be as onerous as the South African series. I think New Zealand series will be a real good pipe opener for the series against South Africa. Australians in Australia in front of your home crowd, I'd say you'll be ready for them.
While Rutherford has adapted well to his new role, it seems there's still a desire to return to New Zealand.
I'd like to think there is a place for me. I'd perhaps look at the option of going back there with with some relish. I think there's a few old scores that, from their point of view, still need to be settled, and Ken Rutherford still hasn't got a part to play there. That's a bit unfortunate. You're a long time retired in this game, and I'd like to think that before I leave cricket that I might have the opportunity to go back there and play again.
And what's wrong with New Zealand cricket? What do they need to do?
Yeah, I think the selectors have erred somewhat by kicking guys out perhaps prematurely, and by bringing young guys in who probably weren't quite ready, and probably by not sticking to the young guys long enough. It's been very much a revolving door policy in New Zealand selection, probably not so much over the last 12 months, but probably in the 4 years prior to that, and that hasn't helped from a depth point of view. New Zealand cricket hasn't got huge amounts of depth at first class level, unlike Australia, who obviously through their Sheffield Shield have tremendous depth. New Zealand will have to rely on, say, a hard core of 18 to 20 players to call upon. And if you can't show confidence in that number of players, then you're really going to go into problems.
That wraps up today's episode of The Cricket Show. But pull up a deck chair again tomorrow for another top edition when we'll meet a true cricketing royal, the Nawab of Bataudi. Until then, bye for now.